There's the kind of person you've probably met at least once. Someone who doesn't flinch when things fall apart. Deadlines collapse around them, conversations get tense, someone raises their voice, and they just sit there, steady, almost like they're watching it all from behind glass. People call them strong. People call them grounded. But if you look a little closer, you start to notice something quieter underneath. They rarely get excited. They rarely ask for anything. And they rarely let you in. That stillness isn't always peace. Sometimes it's the aftermath of too much. When a person goes through prolonged stress, too much chaos, too much loss, too much responsibility at the wrong age, the brain doesn't stay the same. It reorganizes. It builds new defaults. And those defaults don't announce themselves. They show up as personality traits, communication habits, and relationship patterns. Things that look like character but are actually survival strategies that never got the memo that the emergency is over. The first sign is emotional flatness, and it's one of the most misread ones. These are people who respond to genuinely shocking news with a quiet, "Yeah, that makes sense," who receives good news without celebration, who reaches a goal they worked for years and feels nothing much. From the outside, it reads as maturity or emotional control. But psychologically, what's happened is that the brain learned, usually through repeated painful experience, that reacting is expensive and rarely useful. Crying didn't change the outcome. Hoping made the disappointment worse. So the system recalibrated. Keep the response small, stay level, protect the energy. Researchers call this emotional blunting, a state where the full range of emotional experience gets compressed. Not because the person is unfeeling, but because feeling everything at full volume for years became genuinely unsustainable. Then there's the pattern of radical self-reliance, what psychology sometimes calls compulsive autonomy. These are the people who will spend 3 hours solving a problem alone before sending a single message asking for help. Who says I'm fine on reflex even when they clearly aren't? When someone offers to help, I feel an almost physical discomfort, like an alarm going off. This didn't come from arrogance, it came from experience. At some point in their life, help wasn't reliable, or it arrived with conditions, with judgment attached, with debt attached, with disappointment baked in. So the brain concluded, needing people is a liability. And it protected them by making independence feel like the only safe option. The painful irony is that these people are usually the ones everyone else leans on. They're described as dependable, capable, and low maintenance. But the inner experience is often one of deep exhaustion and an unspoken belief that if they stopped holding everything together, nobody would notice in time. There's also the person who uses humor like a tool, not for entertainment, but for distance. They're the ones in the room who can make a dark situation funny within minutes, who deflects vulnerability with a perfectly timed joke. Who can reference painful parts of their past with a lightness that makes other people laugh and simultaneously feel slightly guilty for laughing? This isn't avoidance exactly. It's a regulation. Humor gives the mind a way to acknowledge something painful without fully colliding with it. It keeps the person in control of how their story is received. But when humor becomes the only available language for difficult emotions, those emotions don't disappear. They just stop being processed. And often late at night when there's no audience and no punchline ready, everything that was held at arm's length suddenly isn't. Relationships reveal another layer. People who've carried too much for too long often love carefully, almost strategically. Not coldly, carefully. They take longer to open up. They watch before they engage. They share in layers slowly, testing as they go. And they keep a quiet part of themselves that nobody fully reaches. This is what happens when past closeness came packaged with instability. When the people who were supposed to be safe were unpredictable, or left, or made intimacy feel like a risk. The nervous system learns to run a constant background check in relationships. Is this safe? Is this consistent? What's the catch? It's not cynicism. It's pattern recognition that was once necessary and never fully switched off. And then there's the one that surprises people the most. The person who handles crises beautifully but quietly unravels when life gets peaceful. When things slow down, their anxiety actually increases. They find themselves restless in the quiet, creating problems when none exist, mentally scanning for what's about to go wrong. This is what happens when a nervous system spends years calibrated to high-intensity environments. Stress becomes the baseline. Calm starts to feel like the exception, and exceptions by definition don't last, so the body stays ready. It keeps the engine running even when there's nowhere to go. Rest for these people doesn't feel like relief, it feels like waiting. Here's what matters most though. None of this is damage. Every single one of these patterns was once the right answer to a real problem. Emotional flatness, self-reliance, humor, careful love, restlessness, these were intelligent responses to environments that were genuinely too much. The mind didn't fail. It adapted. It protected the person from things they couldn't control. The difficulty is that adaptations don't always know when the context has changed. Strategies built for survival inside chaos can become the thing that keeps us from fully living once the chaos is gone. Healing in this case doesn't mean dismantling who you've become. It means slowly, patiently introducing your nervous system to the idea that not every room is the room it learned to survive in. That not every person is the person who makes closeness feel dangerous. That stillness can be safe. That needing something doesn't make you a liability. That takes time. It takes repetition. And it usually takes more compassion than anyone thought to give you when you were learning these patterns in the first place. So if something in here felt uncomfortably close, if you recognized yourself in the flatness, the self-sufficiency, the humor, the careful distance, the inability to rest, that recognition itself means something. It means you're no longer just surviving on autopilot. And that's usually where things start to shift.